What if Sirius Black had never gone to Azkaban? Asterisk Chapter 1. The night everything changed at the explosion that rocked Godric's Hollow. On that fateful Halloween night in 1981, drew more than just the ministry officials and order members, as Hagrid cradled the crying infant Harry Potter in his massive arms. A black dog materialized from the shadows, transforming into the wild-eyed figure of Sirius Black. "Give him to me, Hagrid," Sirius gasped, his voice breaking. "I'm his godfather. James and Lily. They wanted me to take care of him." But before Hagrid could respond, another figure stumbled into the ruins. Peter Pettigrew, his silver hand gleaming in the moonlight, his face twisted with panic and guilt. "Sirius." Peter squeaked, but his voice carried a different tone than it would have in the original timeline. This time, Remus Lupin had arrived just moments behind him, having followed the scent of betrayal that had haunted him all evening. "Peter," Remus said quietly, his wand already drawn, "I know what you've done." The confrontation was swift. Without the crowd of muggles that had surrounded them in the original timeline, without the desperate chase through London streets, Pettigrew was captured that very night. His silver hand, the dark mark still fresh on his arm, and his own panicked confession sealed his fate. Sirius Black never went to Azkaban. Chapter 2. Growing up, Harry James Potter Black grew up in Grimmauld Place, but it was nothing like the grim, neglected house the Order would later use as headquarters. Under Sirius's care, the ancestral Black home was transformed. The screaming portrait of Mrs. Black was removed the very first week. "Sorry, Mum, but the kid needs his sleep." The house elf heads were taken down and sunlight was allowed to stream through clean windows for the first time in decades. "Tell me about my parents again, Padfoot," 5-year-old Harry would ask, curled up in Sirius's lap by the fireplace. And Sirius would tell him not just the sanitized version he might have shared with an older Harry, but real stories. How James had been arrogant but grew out of it. How Lily had been fierce and brilliant. How they'd fallen in love during their 7th year. How they'd fought in the war. How they'd died protecting him. Harry grew up knowing he was loved, knowing he was special not because he was famous, but because he was James and Lily's son. He learned magic from the very beginning, not just theory, but the joy of it. Sirius taught him to transform into a stag, his animagus form manifesting early, at age 9. Much to everyone's amazement, and to find mischief in the most mundane moments. Remus Lupin was a constant presence, his guilt over suspecting Sirius replaced with the relief of having his best friend back. Once a month, Harry would stay with the Weasleys while Sirius helped Remus through his transformations, and Harry grew up thinking of the full moon as Uncle Mooney's sick days, with the casual acceptance children have for the adults they love. Chapter 3. The Hogwarts years begin when Harry's Hogwarts letter arrived. He wasn't discovering magic for the first time. He was coming home to a world he'd always known. The shopping trip to Diagon Alley wasn't a revelation but a homecoming, with Sirius proudly introducing his godson to old friends and fellow war veterans. "That's Harry Potter," people would whisper, but Harry had long since grown comfortable with the attention. Sirius had prepared him for it, explained his fame without letting it go to his head. On the Hogwarts Express, Harry met Ron Weasley not as a boy desperate for friendship, but as someone who already knew Ron's family well. Their friendship formed naturally, without the desperate intensity of two lonely children finding each other. When Hermione Granger corrected him about some piece of magical knowledge, Harry didn't feel threatened or annoyed. Sirius had raised him to value intelligence and question everything. "You're brilliant," he told her simply, and meant it. The sorting hat took longer with Harry than it had in the original timeline. With confidence came options. The hat sensed the courage that would have placed him in Gryffindor, but also the loyalty that ran deeper when built on love rather than desperate need. The intelligence nurtured by years of Sirius's unconventional teaching methods, and yes, even some ambition not for power, but to live up to the legacy of parents he'd been raised to honor. "Gryffindor," the hat finally declared, but Harry caught its whispered addition, "though you could have done well anywhere." Mr. Potter Black. Chapter 4. A different kind of school year. Harry's first year at Hogwarts unfolded differently, without the shadow of abuse and neglect haunting his every interaction. When Professor Snape sneered at him during their first potions class, Harry didn't cower or bristle. He met the professor's gaze steadily. "Something amusing, Mr. Potter?" Snape drawled after Harry failed to look away. "Just wondering if you knew." "My parents as well as everyone says you did, Professor," Harry replied politely. "Sirius has told me so much about their school days, but I'd love to hear other perspectives." The question caught Snape off guard. This wasn't the arrogant James Potter he'd expected, nor was it the cowering victim he'd hoped to bully. This was something else entirely, a boy who spoke of his parents with genuine curiosity. Rather than either ignorance or arrogance, the protection around the Philosopher's Stone remained. But without Voldemort's immediate return, Peter Pettigrew had been in Azkaban for a decade, unable to search for his master. There was no urgent threat. Quirrell remained simply an incompetent defense teacher, not a vessel for the Dark Lord. Harry still became the youngest Seeker in a century, still loved Quidditch, still found himself at the center of adventure. But these adventures were different, born from curiosity and friendship rather than desperate survival. Chapter 5. The missing ward years that should have seen Voldemort's return passed quietly. Peter Pettigrew rotted in Azkaban, his mind slowly succumbing to the Dementors, taking with him the knowledge of his master's whereabouts. Without Pettigrew's return, without Bertha Jorkin's convenient capture, Voldemort remained a bodiless wraith, unable to return to power. Harry's second year brought the Chamber of Secrets, but without Lucius Malfoy's confidence that Voldemort would soon return. Tom Riddle's diary remained safely hidden in Malfoy Manor. Instead, Harry's second year was marked by his increasing skill in transfiguration. Professor McGonagall noted his unusual talent for human transformation and his growing friendship with Luna Lovegood, a strange first year who seemed to see the world from angles nobody else considered. His third year saw the introduction of a competent defense against the dark arts teacher, Professor Kingsley Shacklebolt, who had been rotated out of aura duty for a teaching stint. Without the constant threat of Voldemort's return, the position was no longer cursed, and good teachers were finally able to stay. Sirius attended every Quidditch match, cheering louder than any parent in the stands. He chaperoned Hogsmeade visits, embarrassing Harry with stories about the Marauders' own adventures in the village. He was there for parent conferences, for award ceremonies, for every milestone that the Dursleys had ignored. Chapter 6. The tournament that never was. Harry's fourth year proceeded without a Triwizard tournament. There was no need for Barty Crouch Jr. to infiltrate Hogwarts, no reason for foreign schools to visit. Instead, Harry's fourth year was marked by the normal teenage concerns, his growing feelings for Cho Chang, his increasing mastery of advanced magic, and his decision to spend his summer helping Sirius research their family history. It was during this research that they discovered something troubling. While going through old Black family records, they found references to other Horcruxes objects that seemed connected to Tom Riddle's past. Sirius, who had never lost his edge from his aura training, recognized the signs. "Harry," he said one evening, looking up from a pile of dusty books, "I think we need to talk to Dumbledore." Chapter 7. The hunt begins. The revelation of Voldemort's Horcruxes came not from a desperate prophecy or the witnessing of murder, but from methodical research and growing suspicion. Dumbledore, when presented with the evidence, was both impressed and concerned. "You understand what this means?" Dumbledore asked, his blue eyes serious behind his half-moon spectacles. Harry, now 15 and mature beyond his years, thanks to Sirius's honest parenting, nodded. "It means he's not really gone, and it means we need to find these things before he figures out how to come back without Pettigrew." The hunt for Horcruxes became a family project. Sirius used his connections in the wizarding world, Remus contributed his research skills, and Harry provided the unique perspective of someone who had grown up hearing stories about Tom Riddle's psychology rather than fearing his name. They found the ring in the Gaunt shack during Harry's 5th year, destroyed it safely with Dumbledore's help. The locket took longer. It wasn't until Harry's 6th year that they tracked it down to a cave by the sea, and even then, It was Harry's stag Patronus that helped them navigate the inferi-infested waters. Chapter 8. The Boy Who Chose by His 7th year. Harry Potter Black had become something unprecedented in the wizarding world, a young man who had grown up secure in love, confident in his abilities and clear about his choices. When they finally located the remaining Horcruxes, including the diadem hidden in Hogwarts and the cup stolen from Gringotts, Harry insisted on being part of their destruction. "This isn't your burden alone," Harry, Sirius told him as they prepared for the final confrontation with Voldemort's remnant. "I know," Harry replied, and he did know. That was the difference. But it's still my choice. The final battle, when it came, was nothing like the desperate war that had ravaged the wizarding world. In another timeline, it was a careful, planned operation involving auras, the Order of the Phoenix, and a 17-year-old who had never doubted that he was loved. Voldemort, weakened by the systematic destruction of his Horcruxes and unable to return to full power, without Pettigrew's aid, fell not to luck and sacrifice, but to careful planning and overwhelming force. Epilogue: The man who lived 20 years later, Harry Potter Black stood on platform 9 3/4, watching his own son board the Hogwarts Express. Sirius, now grey-haired but still mischievous at 63, was making faces at his grandson through the train window. "Think he'll be in Gryffindor?" Ginny Potter Black asked, slipping her hand into Harry's. "Does it matter?" Harry replied, smiling as his son waved from the train. "He knows he's loved. The rest is just details." As the train pulled away, Harry reflected on the path not taken, the childhood of abuse, the desperate friendships, the burden of unwanted fame and terrible responsibility. He'd heard whispers over the years from seers and time-turner researchers about other possibilities, other timelines where things had gone very differently. But this was his timeline. This was the world where Sirius Black had never gone to. Azkaban, where Peter Pettigrew had been caught, where Harry Potter had grown up loved and confident and free to choose his own path. And as he watched the Hogwarts Express disappear around the bend, carrying his son toward adventures that would be born from curiosity rather than necessity, Harry thought it was a pretty good timeline to live in. The scar on his forehead now, just a faint mark rather than a lightning bolt of pain, tingled slightly in the autumn breeze. But it was just the weather. Voldemort had been gone for 20 years, and Harry Potter Black had learned the difference between a scar and a wound. This scar had healed completely, because it had been tended with love from the very beginning. Chapter 9. The Ripple Effects. The Weasley family's trajectory changed dramatically in this timeline. Without the constant threat of Voldemort's return, Arthur Weasley's career flourished. His fascination with Muggle artifacts, combined with his inherent goodness, led to his promotion to head of a new department, Muggle-Wizard Relations. By Harry's 3rd year, the Burrow had been expanded magically. Of course, and the family's financial struggles were a thing of the past. Percy never fell out with his family. There was no ministry denial of Voldemort's return to drive a wedge between them. Instead, he became a respected department head himself, often collaborating with his father on progressive legislation. Fred and George's joke shop, Weasley's Wizard Wheezes, opened earlier and with Sirius as a silent investor. Pranks are an art form, Sirius had declared, remembering his marauder days. These boys understand that. The shop became wildly successful, with branches in Hogsmeade and even Paris. Ron, growing up without the crushing weight of poverty and his family's constant worry, developed his natural strategic mind. He became Hogwarts chess champion by his 4th year and eventually pursued a career as the strategic consultant for the Aura department, a role that suited his tactical brilliance perfectly. Hermione's different path. Hermione Granger's friendship with Harry took on a different quality. When she wasn't constantly worried about his welfare, without the desperate need to research ways to keep Harry alive, her natural curiosity led her down different academic paths. She became fascinated with magical law and rights advocacy, inspired by meeting Sirius early in her friendship with Harry. How could they imprison someone without a trial? She had asked indignantly during her First visit to Grimmauld Place during second year, when Sirius casually mentioned what almost happened to him. By her 7th year, Hermione was already working with the Department for Regulation and Control of Magical Creatures, advocating for house elf rights and werewolf integration. Her relationship with Victor Krum, which began during a cultural exchange program rather than the Tri-Wizard tournament, blossomed into a serious romance built on mutual intellectual respect. The Longbottom revelation without the urgency of Voldemort's immediate return, different secrets came to light. During Harry's 6th year, while researching family histories for their Horcrux hunt, they discovered something crucial. Neville Longbottom's parents hadn't been tortured. Just for information about Voldemort's whereabouts, Alice and Frank Longbottom had been close to uncovering the truth about Horcruxes. They knew, Dumbledore said quietly when presented with Alice Longbottom's hidden research notes, discovered in a vault at Gringotts that she had left instructions to open. If she ever became incapacitated, they were tracking the same patterns. We are now. This revelation led to a breakthrough in treating the Longbottom's condition, while they couldn't be fully healed. The combination of their research notes and advances in magical psychology, which had progressed much further without a war taking priority, allowed for moments of clarity. Neville's transformation was remarkable. Knowing his parents had been brilliant researchers rather than just unfortunate victims, gave him a confidence that had been missing. By his 7th year, he was head boy and showing remarkable talent in both herbology and magical research. Draco Malfoy's redemption. Perhaps the most surprising change was in Draco Malfoy. Without Voldemort's return, without the pressure on his family from Death Eater expectations, Lucius Malfoy's attention turned to other pursuits. He became obsessed with magical artifacts and their history, a pursuit that was expensive, but ultimately harmless. Draco, freed from the expectation that he would join the Death Eaters, found himself questioning many of his father's beliefs. The turning point came during 4th year when he witnessed Sirius Black speaking passionately at a Hogwarts career day about the importance of choosing your own family over the one you're born into. My own family disowned me for refusing to join Voldemort, Sirius had said. Best thing that ever happened to me. Forced me to become who I actually wanted to be. Draco began spending time in the library not to outdo Hermione, but to understand the history his father had taught him. What he found disturbed him. By 6th year, he had quietly approached Professor McGonagall about the possibility of switching houses. Highly irregular, Mr. Malfoy, she had said, but her eyes showed she wasn't entirely surprised. I know, Professor, but I think I was sorted when I was 11 and scared and trying to be what my father wanted. I'd like to try being who I actually am. The race sorting ceremony was private, attended only by the teachers and Harry, Ron, and Hermione, who would become unlikely friends with Draco over their shared advanced potions class. The Sorting Hat's decision was swift. Ravenclaw, Luna's expanded. Roll Luna Lovegood's friendship with Harry deepened in this timeline. Without the constant danger surrounding him, Harry had time to appreciate Luna's unique perspective on the world. Her ability to see things others missed proved invaluable during the Horcrux hunt. You're looking for pieces of soul, she said, matter-of-factly during one of their research sessions in 5th year. But souls leave impressions, like footprints in wet sand. If you know how to look, you can see where they've been. Luna's unusual magical sight, dismissed by many as imagination, proved to be a rare form of psychic ability. Under careful training from Professor Trelawney, who was a much better teacher, when not under the pressure of making prophecies about Harry's doom, Luna learned to focus her gift. She was the one who ultimately located the final Horcrux Nagini by tracking the soul scent that lingered around places Voldemort had been. The international impact, the absence of a second wizarding war, had profound effects on the international magical community. Without the crisis in Britain, magical governments around the world were able to focus on progress rather than defense. The International Confederation of Wizards passed sweeping reforms on magical creature rights, led by a coalition including Britain's new progressive government. Werewolf registration was replaced with voluntary support programs. House elf liberation became a gradual, negotiated process rather than the radical activism Hermione had initially pursued. Most significantly, the statute of secrecy began to be gradually relaxed, without the fear that dark wizards might exploit exposed magical communities. Careful trials began in select locations around the world for limited magical muggle integration. Harry's career choice in this timeline, Harry never wanted to be an Auror, growing up with Sirius's stories about the corruption and bureaucracy he'd witnessed. Harry was more interested in magical research and education. After Hogwarts, he spent 2 years traveling the world with Sirius, studying different magical traditions and learning from international experts. He became particularly fascinated with defensive magic, not the combat-focused defense they'd learned at Hogwarts, but the protective enchantments that kept communities safe. When he returned to Britain, he was offered a position at Hogwarts teaching defense against the dark arts. At 21, he became the youngest professor in the school's history, and his classes were renowned for their practical, positive approach to protection and safety. The next generation, Harry and Ginny's children, grew up in a world where their father was famous, not as the boy who lived, but as the boy who chose, a reference to his decision to actively hunt down the Horcruxes, rather than wait for Voldemort to return to power. Their eldest son, James Sirius Black, inherited his grandfather's mischievous streak and his great-godfather's wisdom. Their daughter, Lily Luna Black, showed early signs of her namesake's unusual magical perception, but perhaps, most importantly, they grew up in a world where being different was celebrated rather than feared, where asking questions was encouraged, and where the greatest victory wasn't surviving against impossible odds, but choosing to build something better. Sirius in his golden years at 63, Sirius Black was nothing like the broken man who had died in the Department of Mysteries in another timeline. He was a beloved godfather, a respected member of the Wizengamot appointed after his help in the Horcrux hunt, and an active advocate for criminal justice reform. He never married, already got the best family a man could ask for. He would say, but he had become the favorite uncle to an entire generation of children, the Weasley kids. Neville, Luna, even Draco Malfoy's younger siblings all considered him family. His greatest joy was his role as grandfather to Harry's children, a role he embraced with the same fierce love and protective instinct he had shown Harry, but tempered now with the wisdom of age and experience. "You know what the best part is?" he told Harry one evening as they watched James Sirius and Albus Severus, named for the headmaster, who had trusted a teenager with the fate of the wizarding world, play Quidditch in the garden behind Grimmauld Place. "What's that, Padfoot? They get to be just kids. No prophecies, no scars, no burdens they didn't choose. Just kids." Harry smiled, watching his sons laugh as they chased the snitch around the apple trees. "Yeah, I think Mum and Dad would have liked that. They would have loved it," Sirius said softly. "They would have loved all of it." And as the sun set over London, painting the sky in shades of gold and crimson, Harry Black reflected on the truth that had shaped his entire life. Sometimes the most powerful magic of all was simply being loved from the very beginning.